Evening, everyone, and thank you for joining. Let me get my face on the screen here. Hope everyone is having a good Friday evening. Thank you for joining me for a little ghost story. I haven't done these in a bit, so I figured let's get back into the swing a little bit and do one. It's a Friday night, and the storm is approaching, so it's a little bit eerie and creepy around here. The wind is picking up. And winter tends to be a little bit of a scary time as well as fall. So I figured let's continue this. And it's always fun when I have a story that I'm interested in telling you. So this one is very interesting to me. So I thought, why not? Let's do it. So let me just say hello to folks that are here. Hello, Adam. Good to see you. My sandwich eating friend. I watched your sandwich smorgasbord this afternoon. Very good. Mike F is here. Carmela, my friend, good to see you. Osada, the chocolate master, is here. So Tommy Stiggs was here before. So thank you guys for joining. It's a small crowd today. I expected that. It's a Friday, and people have things to do. But if you don't, that's why we're here, for something for you to watch, entertain you with. So before I get into the story, let me do the traditional lighting of my candles, because you can't have a ghost story without candlelight. There we go. That makes it better. And I have my traditional libation, which is my old fashioned. What's going on with these candles here? There we go. There we go. All right. So tonight's story is the ghost part of this story. I'll start off with that. The ghost part of the story is kind of not that impressive, but the historical context leading up to it is what's impressive to me, and I wanted to share that. And it's always mind-boggling to me how there's parts of American history that we just do not know or weren't told. And this one has to do with New Jersey, Revolutionary War times in New Jersey, and an individual by the name of the Reverend James Caldwell. Now, I was never taught anything about him in school, but he was a very pivotal figure in the Revolutionary War for New Jersey, for the efforts of the colonists, the patriots in New Jersey. So it's a story that's worth telling. We're losing track of our history, and that bothers me. And I think I want to help us get back on track if we can, and keep this history alive. Hello, William. Thank you for joining. Hello, Stephen Morinello. Good to see you guys. Thank you so much, and welcome to my story. So the story around the Reverend James Caldwell, who came to be known as the Fighting Parson. And that's because, as you'll see, this guy was a man of God, but he was also a man of the sword. So his efforts had a very significant effect on the Patriots winning the war, at least in New Jersey. So the background to Mr. James Caldwell, and in New Jersey, we have several towns that are named after him. We have Caldwell, we have West Caldwell, and we have North Caldwell. So we have 3 towns that are named directly after this man, and that's how important he was. And it's just mind-boggling to me. I wasn't taught about him in school. But anyway, this man was born in 1734, born in Virginia, to a family that had a large farm, and that was something that it was expected he'd go into. So he had about 500 acres in Virginia. His father was a successful farmer, but James had a calling from the Lord. He wanted to be a minister. So he headed north and enrolled in Princeton at the time, which at that time was called the College of New Jersey. Now, we have the College of New Jersey now, but it's a state school. It's different. But at the time, that's what Princeton was called, the College of New Jersey. So he enrolls in Princeton in 1755, stays there, graduates in 1759. And then in 1760, he gets his first parsonage, which is the Presbyterian Church of Elizabethtown. So he becomes the reverend of that church. And Elizabethtown, which is actually in Union, New Jersey today, present day Union, New Jersey. And he becomes the parson there, and he's there for 3 years. And then he meets a woman by the name of Hannah Ogden, whom he marries. So that's 1763. He marries Hannah, and Hannah and he have 10 children together. That's the end of the story. There is that they have 10 children together, but that's not the important part of the story, because she becomes a very important part of the story too, because the ghost part of this is actually both of them. Both of their ghosts are what we're going to talk about. So in 1775, the revolution comes. Lexington and Concord and the colonies join, and we have a revolution against Britain. And what does James do? James Caldwell, the Reverend, signs up and becomes the chaplain of the 3rd New Jersey Brigade, and stays with that brigade until 1777. So 2 years he's out there fighting with the brigade in various battles. And in 1777 he becomes a quartermaster. And if you don't know what a quartermaster is someone who is responsible for finding supplies for the army, suiting up the army, getting them the ammunitions they need, all that stuff, getting food for the army, getting clothing, all that stuff. And he does that for a couple of years, 3 years, and then he steps back a bit to go back into his parsonage to resume his reverently duties while the Revolutionary War is still going on. Now, he is a very fervent patriot. It's very clear that he clearly supports the revolution, is anti-British. In fact, his parents were anti-British. They were Scots-Irish and fled to America to avoid British rule. And so it's in his blood to be an independent, liberty-loving person and anti-British. So 1780 comes around, and he begins to, from the pulpit, advocate for the revolution. He becomes a real mouthpiece for the revolution, for recruiting people. In fact, there were 100, it's documented, there were 100 soldiers, 100 revolutionary soldiers that were a member of his Presbyterian congregation. And he's credited with convincing many of them to join the cause and fight the British. So he's done this. And in fact, one person was actually a signer of the Constitution. So there were a few famous people there. Stephen Crane was one of them. And then I forgot what the name of the other individual that signed the Constitution was. I don't know. I wrote it down, but I don't know what I did with it. But nonetheless, it goes to show how what a passionate speaker he was, and how he was able to convince people to join the revolution, join the cause for individual liberty. Now, he was such a thorn in the side of the British that a loyalist militia in 1780 attacks and burns down his house and his church. So this is with the help of the British. There were many loyalists in the colonies, as you may know, and many of them formed a militia. So they would fight against the colonists. They were loyal to the crown, and with the help of the British, who would give them supplies and guns and ammunitions, they would do their things. They would go out there, they would attack and burn things, loot towns, etc. Do as much as they can to prevent the Patriots from winning. So he was on their target. He was a target on his back by them, and they burned down his parsonage. And so what does he do? He picks up his family and he moves 4 miles down the road. So that was in Union City proper, Elizabethtown. And he moves four miles down the road to what a section of it, which was called Connecticut Farm, and he starts a parsonage there. Now he's there maybe 3 months when the war comes back again to him, and there's actual a battle of Connecticut Farms that takes place right there where his parsonage is. The British and George Washington's men are clashing in the streets, and the British end up getting the raw end of the stick there and are driven back and have to retreat. But in typical fashion from what the British would do, and this is something that they don't teach you. They don't teach you this in school, which they should, because it's reality. The British used to fire towns, meaning they would destroy the town. If they were defeated and they had to retreat, they would destroy the town, burn the houses, burn the crops, burn whatever they could to try to prevent the enemy from profiting from anything there. So what do they do in this case? They're withdrawing, they're retreating because they're losing. And one British soldier takes a shot at his wife in his house and kills her, shoots her in her room, through her window, kills her in front of her 18-month-old and a 3-month-old toddler. And she dies right there from the shot. And what do the British do? They take her and her kids, they take her body and their kids out, and they fire the town. So they leave her body on the ground, they take the kids out, and they fire and burn down his house once again. Just one of the many atrocities that the British did against American colonists that they don't tell you about, but I'm here to tell you they did. So what does James Caldwell do? James Caldwell was actually fighting in the battle. When he finds out what happens, he's devastated by the loss of his wife. He takes his children and gives his children to someone else to watch, to caretake for. And then he goes off, and he goes off on a circuit, riding from town to town, preaching the story of how his innocent wife was murdered by the British and how people should join the cause to defeat the British and stop their evil doings. So he does this. He travels around New Jersey, and he gains more and more support, gains more and more people using the sacrifice that his wife gave her life for, to encourage people to join. And the ranks of the patriots swell. And now that takes us to 1780, June of 1780. So, and it was only maybe a month and a half later, the end of June. So maybe July or end of June of 1780. He actually fights again in a battle, the Battle of Springfield. He's takes a break from his circuit riding and fights in the Battle of Springfield. And in that battle of Springfield was very important, and he was instrumental in did heroic things in that battle. But it was important because if the colonists that were in Springfield did not, or the Patriots did not win that battle, it was a very good likelihood that the British would have been able to capture Washington himself, who was in Morristown at the time, and he wouldn't have had enough time to escape. So it was a very pivotal battle for the Revolution, and he was a part of that and helped them win. So again, he's the thorn in the British's side, and the British know this, and they're going to do anything they can do to get him out of the way, or at least get back at him. So he continues, and after that battle, he continues back on his circuit and starts riding and recruiting. And he does this until 1781. Now, if you recall your history, 1781. The summer of late summer of 1781, I believe. I don't know if it was August or whatever. That's the Battle of Yorktown, and that's basically the end of the war, in the sense that the major battles are Cornwallis is defeated by Washington in Yorktown, Virginia, surrenders, and basically that's the end of the war. There's more skirmishes that occur, but that was it. It was a foregone conclusion at that point that the British were going to lose. The French Navy had arrived, and that was the end of the British. From that perspective, they weren't going to win. So it's November of 1781, and James is returning from trying to get home to his parsonage to rebuild it, because remember, it was burnt to the ground by the British. And he's in Port Elizabeth. He's coming in by ship to Port Elizabeth, and he gets off, and he's stopped by a sentry, an American sentry. Now, this is the interesting part. It's an American sentry who was whose job was to stop people to make sure they weren't smuggling out British goods, British goods that were banned. And what he was supposed to do is check people's bags, make sure they weren't bringing something in that was considered contraband from the British. Because again, the war was over effectively, but it's not over because the peace treaty isn't signed until the peace treaty of Paris. So there's still a state of war that occurs. So so this sentry tells him to stop and search his bag. And he's traveling with a couple of other people, a couple of friends. So he sees the sentry tell him to stop, and he complies. Now, most people knew who he was at that time, so it's very odd that a sentry would ask him to stop as a British spy and see if he was doing something that he shouldn't have been doing. But he complies. He stops and goes to open his bag, and the sentry takes his gun and shoots it, and directly shoots him and kills him right there on the spot. Now, it's later found out that this sentry was paid by the British to kill James Caldwell. And that sentry was a man by the name of James Morgan. And he was immediately arrested by the colonists, and tried and eventually hanged for the murder of James Caldwell. So we have the Caldwells, both were killed, both gave their life for the revolution. And in a very unheroic way, in the sense that his wife was simply killed while she's trying to protect her children, hold her children back, and protect them from the fighting. And he is murdered by the British, by a plot by the British to get rid of him. And so this goes, so in 1782, about, 9 months later, the parsonage is rebuilt. Unfortunately, James is gone, and he is buried in the parsonage right there in Union, along with his wife. His wife's body is interned there as well, and they are interned there to this day. Now, here it comes to the ghost story. The ghost part of the story is that it was about 1801, around there, where strange things start to happen in the new parsonage. There are stories of sounds, disembodied sounds, of the bells ringing at certain times on their own, of cold wind blowing through where there is no wind outside. And this goes on for many, many years, and it goes on in up until present day. So think about that. It's 200 years of ghostly sightings around this particular parsonage, this house that was built. And it's not the original house. It's the house that was built on the site where the original was burnt and by the British. And this goes on. And actually in 2018, paranormal investigators went there and did an investigation. And their finding was that they had sightings as well as video evidence of shapes moving around in the dark, and they recorded some interaction with speaking to the spirits, and they specifically asked the spirits if you're Hannah, meaning his wife, and the response they got was a definitive yes. So it's interesting if you are into that and believe the paranormal investigators and how they talk to spirits. It seems like there is some evidence that it could be Hannah herself there. Now, aside from that, there have been sightings of James himself walking the grounds late at night in his tricorner hat, colonial outfit, wandering around holding a Bible, wandering around in the churchyard holding a Bible. And there's even been claims that on certain nights when the wind is blowing through the church, through the parsonage, you can hear on the wind, you can hear whispering, and whispering has been found to be him his voice, or what they think is his voice, giving a sermon about the British and how liberty and how we must join the cause of liberty against the British. Now, I don't know about you, but if that was the case, that would be amazing to hear something like that over the wind, to hear the voice of, or a voice of a sermon. And they have some of his sermons on record, and they say that what people hear match some of the bigger sermon, like the documented sermons, where he would go through and talk about how it was the religious duty of those to stand up for liberty, and et cetera, et cetera. So it's a very interesting ghost phenomenon that goes along with this, with James Caldwell, who was a definitive hero in the Revolution that we really don't know about. And currently, the parsonage is run by the Historical Society of Union, of the city of Union, New Jersey. But it's not it's not a big site. It's not, a lot of people don't go there, and it's only open on certain days. So it's not something that people really know about. And I think that's a shame, because people should know about this, the historical impact that this man had, and how important he was to the revolution. So whether it's disembodied sounds, or winds, or the bells ringing, and that's an interesting thing. It's also said that on Independence Day, from time to time, the bells will ring on their own when no one's there. Because remember, this is a closed thing now. It's not an active patronage, parsonage. It's not an active church. But on Independence Day, and if you recall your history, on Independence Day, when the Declaration was signed, the days, the 4th, the 5th, and the 6th day, bells were rung all over the colonies as a signal of it passing, the resolution passing of the Declaration of Independence. And they say that at this particular church, which is unoccupied, that sometimes the bells will ring on the 4th of July. So that's would creep me out tremendously if I would ever to experience that. That's pretty darn cool. But that's really the story. So it's not really a story where there's like twists and turns. It's more so the story is really about the history of James Caldwell and the impact he had, and how he was terribly murdered by the British for his patriotism. And his wife too, murdered, and their 9 children or 10 children orphaned at the time, because of their loyalty to the Americans as opposed to the British. Oh, hey, Gianni, I see you're here. Good to see you. Tony the Night Owl, I haven't seen you in a while. Great to see you. Emmanuel Spataro, how are you? Muggsy Siegel is here. How are you doing, guys? Thank you so much for stopping in and saying hi. I really appreciate it. So really, that is my story. It's not a deep one, or a pretty, not a long one. But to me, it kind of sent chills up my spine when I heard about the sightings and how long the sightings have been going on, and the experiences in that particular parsonage, over 200 years of sightings. So who knows? Maybe James Caldwell and his wife Hannah are still ringing the Liberty Bell. Sort of ringing those bells of liberty, and fighting on the revolution, not knowing that they won. Not knowing that we won. So it's a very cool story. And yes, yeah, Johnny. Yes, I said that at the beginning. This was the towns of Caldwell, North Caldwell, as well as West Caldwell, were all named after James Caldwell, and his, for the efforts he put up. Hello, Maureen. Good to see you. And it's a shame that, and I said it was a shame that a lot of people don't know the history, and we don't teach it. I was never taught this in high school. I was never taught about James Caldwell in high school at all. And I think it should be taught. The American Revolution is such a pivotal, it's such an important part of what we are as a country. I mean, how can you leave out these things? And the heroes that made it possible should be remembered. There's no question about it. And he is one of them. His efforts really had a difference, and that's why it ended up with a target on his back by the British for all his efforts. But I would love to be there to hear one of his sermons on the winds one night at that parsonage to see how it goes and experience his words of persuasion, I guess, or powers of persuasion, as they say. He was personally responsible for so many people joining the cause just by his oratory skills. So that to me, that's pretty impressive. So I don't know what you guys are up to, other than that's my story. A short one, but still, I wanted to get back on the track if I could. And this was a story that I thought was kind of interesting. And historical stuff is always interesting to me, so let's spread it around. That's my theory. Let's spread it around. Paul C, good to see you. I don't think I said hello to you. So I don't know what everybody else is doing this evening. You're just sitting home like me, or obviously you are probably if you're in the chat, you're just sitting home like I am. But oh yeah, anytime, Carmela. Edwin, my friend, how are you? Sponsored by Harvard University. Yes, thank you. This one's sponsored by Princeton because James Caldwell went to Princeton. So yeah, it's sponsored by Princeton, not Harvard. So still Ivy League sponsored. Yeah, just sharing and spreading the American history experience and how it relates to certain ghost tales. So it's fun stuff, if you ask me. This is the stuff that I like to talk about. So it's not work for me because I'm doing something I like to do, and I like to share these with you guys. But as always, if anybody has any ideas or has heard anything and heard like a ghostly story that you want me to research, I'd be happy to do it. I really enjoy that, looking into new things. I mean, I tend to focus on New Jersey because that's where I'm from. That's where I've lived all my life. And because of the close connection to the Civil War as one of the 13 original, the Revolutionary War as one of the 13 original colonies. And that period of time always fascinated me. And that's why I look for the ghost stories that relate to that. But there's got to be dozens, if not hundreds of ghost stories in other parts of the country relating to the same stuff. Like Boston must have tons of them. Massachusetts must have tons of them, Gianni. So I don't know what you know, but if you do, let me know. If there's any out there that you've heard, I'll be happy to research them and put them into story form on here so we can talk about them, or at least you guys can listen to it, see if you like them. But yeah, so that's really it for me tonight. I want to thank everybody. It was a small crowd, which is fine with me. It's a Friday night. I'm just happy to be here, and I'm happy you guys would spend some time with me and listen to my gabbing, I should say. But if anyone came in late and you want to hear more about the story, go back to the beginning. It's not too long, obviously. I've only been on 29 minutes. Go back and listen to it. Hit the like button if you can. That's always helpful. And I'm going to say, as always, thank you for watching. And Godfather Show. Ooh, plug for Godfather Show. Godfather Show Sunday, 2 p.m. We will continue Godfather 2 discussion. Me, Tommy, and Thindu. So please stop in and watch us and contribute. If you have nothing else to do, why not? It's better than watching TV, I think. But with that, I'll say God bless. As always, I'm so thankful for you guys for spending time with me. Have a great evening. Oh, wait a minute. Actually, you know what? Before I do that, I wanted to show you some pictures of these guys. I forgot that. How can I forget that? I get telling this story and I forgot it. I want to show you some pictures of what these folks look like. This is Hannah. This was James Caldwell's wife, who was killed by the British bullet while protecting her children in her home during the Battle of Connecticut Farms. Yeah, Connecticut Farms. That's what it is. And let's see. Let's see here. And then let's look at the man, James himself, James Caldwell himself. Let me show you him. Where is my... Where is my, hold on here. Here we go. Where is he? Now, the James Caldwell himself is kind of small, but I'll share it anyway. I don't know if it's kind of hard to look at, but that's the picture. I mean, there's no, obviously from the time period, there's no photographs, but there's only paintings. So this is, and I don't know how to enlarge this, but that's what the guy looked like. He was kind of an unassuming, he looks like an unassuming guy. Doesn't look like a superhero, but his efforts were superhero-like in helping the revolution. Let's see. Do I have another one? Let's see here. Where are we going here? So share screen. Can I share the screen? Let's see. Let's see here. All right, maybe this one's a little better. This is a painting of him on horseback. So that one's kind of hard. It's more of a painting, drawing. I don't know. So it's artist. The problem with these time periods, a lot of this is artist's interpretation. So who knows? But you get the gist of what they kind of look like in that. So let me just say here. So that's about it. So with that, I'll again say thank you for joining. God bless, and have an awesome weekend, awesome evening, and awesome weekend. And let me say good night to you guys.